Thanks everyone for joining today for our advisory council meeting for the fall. And so I guess the first order of business is to welcome everyone here first. And I will, in your packages that were sent out, you would have received an agenda, which includes us adjourning at 11 o'clock this morning, but we certainly have some time if discussion continues. We've got some buffer time there, but conscious of everyone's schedules here this fall. So I will ask for, and thank you, Emily, for putting that up. And we will ask for someone, if you want to raise your hand for approval of the agenda. I have Shannon Piziak, District 10, and a seconder for the moving of the agenda. You just have to raise your hand, or if you want to unmic yourself, certainly unmic yourself and announce. Colin Penner, District 3. Thank you. And before we continue here with the minutes that were circulated, if you want to, I know a number of you are pretty savvy, you've gone in and changed your name. If you want to just make a note on the screen, the district that you're from, by your name or what association you're with, just to make things, if I'm addressing you, I have that information on my screen. And also, if you want to speak during the meeting, please raise your hand. We will watch to make sure. I've got eyes and ears open here as well as at the office. And if you are not a delegate, then of course in the polling functions later on, please refrain from voting or even abstaining the vote. We are recording this meeting, so we will have this information available, as well as if individuals were not able to attend the meeting today, this will be taped for distribution later, because we have a couple really great speakers this morning. We will now move to approval of the meeting minutes from our last advisory council meeting, dated July the 24th of 2024. I'll now ask for, oh, pardon me, I forgot. Is there anyone opposed to moving the agenda before we carry on? That is carried. Okay, we'll move on to the minutes then. I will ask for someone to move the minutes adopted as circulated. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand for moving. Shannon Piziak. Seconder for that motion. Curtis. And were there any errors or omissions from the minutes? Questions? I'll ask the question. Are there any opposed to that motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much. So we will now go to President's remarks on the agenda. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jill Verway, and President of Keystone Agricultural Producers. I'd like to thank everyone again for taking the time to attend today's meeting. As producers, whether you have livestock, crops, or any other products, there is never a good time to get away from the farm. As KAP, we always appreciate your willingness to spend a few, or in this case, a few hours here this morning, participating in our grassroots membership-driven organization. Today's agenda features updates from KAP, a cross-provincial discussion, which we'll have at the end of the day, or the morning rather, and two guest speakers. Our first guest speaker today is Todd Jansen from Ag Data Transport, and we will also have an update from the University of Manitoba on their LEAP project, which KAP is supporting partner of that project. First, I want to provide a bit of an update from the past few months since we met in July. As of November the 8th, Brenna Mahona is no longer with KAP as our general manager. Brenna has taken a role with BASF as their National Manager of Government and Public Affairs. On behalf of our board and staff, I want to thank Brenna for her dedication to KAP over the last 3.5 years. While I'm saddened to see her go, I am incredibly grateful for her contributions to KAP and Canadian agriculture and wish her all the best in her new role. Brenna's tenure with KAP has been marked with a spirit of collaboration and innovation and has truly transformed our organization and agriculture in Manitoba. Her strategic vision and commitment to excellence have not only elevated KAP's status in Manitoba, but have also positioned KAP as a prominent voice for agriculture in Manitoba and across Canada. We extend our heartfelt thanks to Brenna for her commitment, passion, and the many positive changes she has brought to KAP. Her legacy of excellence and team building will continue to guide our team as we move forward. Reflecting on the last number of months for the 2024 season, from a crop standpoint, we saw variability across the province, but overall had positive results. As crops came off the field, many areas in Manitoba experienced above average yields. We know that there are some challenges and were challenges in pockets related to excess moisture from large rainfalls, as well as inability to seed, and remain committed to supporting those producers who have experienced these challenges. We are pleased to see the livestock producers saw good pasture growth over the last year. Hay silage supply is considered good, and we hope for adequate snowfall this winter to recharge both dugouts and fields. Yes, it's again time for district meetings. KAP's begun our district meetings throughout the province. Starting yesterday, I traveled to Arborg to District 10. So we were pleased to have our initial meeting with, tomorrow morning, we will be traveling to Selkirk for District 5. So please check the KAP website or your KAP alert for updated times and locations for those district annual meetings. Make sure you stay involved by attending your local district meetings. This provides you with the opportunity to become a delegate, join the board, bring forward resolutions, and be a part of the KAP or be a part of one of our KAP policy committees. Check out kap.ca, click on our events page to find out again where those local meetings are. And again, we'll be discussing many exciting things that are taking part at our AGM this year. And Colin has actually put it here in the chat, the link as well, if you want to link there. Over the summer and fall, disruptions in Canada's supply chain threatened farming operations across the country. We saw disruptions and tensions with rails and ports, including CN, CPKC, Port of Montreal, and West Coast ports. And I'm pleased to say that we're seeing some really strategic leadership federally to see some movement and some collaboration in all of those cases. KAP did take action and worked with provincial and national partners to advocate for the interests of Manitoba producers throughout these disruptions. These include letters to the Minister of Labour, various employers and unions to ensure that they understand fully how a disruption could impact and does impact our farm operations. Additionally, we did take part in Stop the Strike and Stop the Lockout campaigns led by Pulse Canada and other national partners. All of these disruptions, as I mentioned before, have been resolved. However, we continue to advocate for predictable and stable supply chain in Canada to ensure our producers have all of the necessary elements to continue operating successfully. On the China canola front, it's another issue everyone is aware of. On September 9th, China initiated an anti-dumping investigation into Canadian canola. This is something KAP has been working with canola commodity groups to support advocacy efforts ongoing. We are and have been engaged with Manitoba Canola Growers Association, the Canola Council of Canada, Canadian Canola Growers Association, as well as discussions with Manitoba's Minister of Agriculture, Ron Kostyshin. We continue to be here to support the leadership of Canada's canola commodity groups as they work through the process of providing information for the anti-dumping investigation and look at solutions that will support Canadian farmers to mitigate any impacts they may have experienced or will experience. In closing, looking ahead to 2025, we want to remind everyone of KAP's annual general meeting taking place February the 4th at the Delta Hotel in Winnipeg. Please don't miss this year's event, which will feature a welcome reception the evening before on February the 3rd at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, as well as policy roundtables hosted by the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute. Make sure you register on our website under the events page and take advantage of discounted hotel rates by booking before January the 20th. Thank you again for everyone for being here today, and I look forward to a positive meeting filled with robust discussion. We will now move on to further our membership update, and I'll get Emily to put the last statistics up. And pleased to say that year to date, through a lot of work with Shona, our membership manager, we've been able to update a lot of the inefficiencies that were evident in our deduction companies, and with additional member, where our numbers are actually positive compared to prior years, with to date 4,600. That's as of October 31st. Supporters of additional 926, and opt-outs in line with last year and down from year to date at 330, and we're below what we were prior years. So thank you for putting that up. We will now move on to our operations report. So I will pass the mic on to Colin and Neil, who will first provide a little bit of an operations update as well as policy work update. Colin, if you want to go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm not in a normal setup here. I'm just in Brandon at the Forage and Grasslands Association meeting. So I hope my mock office here is set up okay. So I'm going to just provide a bit of an update from the past few months, from when we met last in July for advisory. Excuse me. Quickly, just to highlight, recently we did have a district meeting out in Brandon at Section 6, which was very well attended, and we had a positive feedback to that with the RCMP and some legal experts regarding property rights and things of that nature for producers. So stay tuned for more on that. We may be looking at doing more meetings that are similar to that in the coming future. I'm just going to share my screen here and go through the operations update for the past quarter here. Excuse me. So you can see my screen. So I'm going to just close that off here. And okay, so here's our operations update. So this has been developed and updated over the past few weeks and months, and is what will turn into our annual report. Excuse me. So as you can see, we've kept the same format we've been using for the past while with these websites. We find it's a good way for folks to be able to look at updates on what we've been up to when it suits them, and it allows us something to share with folks. So I will put the link to this in the chat as well, so you can do a bit of a deeper dive on it at your own pace. But we've got some things in here we've highlighted. We put together a video that talks about the value of KAP, a bit about us, what we do, and just to provide some information for folks that may not be aware of what we're doing. Some highlights from the past year, you'll see here, again, that education property tax rebate was maintained. We saw some positive outcomes from the last provincial budget. Some changes to APP, Jill's appointment to the Business and Jobs Council for the Premier's, with the Premier's Business and Jobs Council, movement on a vet strategy. So this is, again, just going to highlight some of those areas. We're sticking in line with those key pillars that we've talked about in the past from KAP's roadmap. And Each of these have now informed our strategic plan that you may have seen. So this will be on the website, excuse me, going into each of the different priority pillars. This was developed by the board and in collaboration with various stakeholders, including commodity groups, individual producers, and others. So I won't read this all for you. So anyway, this is just the same format we've used in the past. I'll just flip through again, advocacy. You're going to see some of those key highlights that I mentioned before, talking a bit about what are some of the strategic initiatives we've been focused on with government and industry relations, strategic coalitions, educating decision makers, etc., things like that, highlighting a few different areas from the past year. So I just wanted to show everybody this website, and what I'll do is I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. I want to just talk about a few specific areas to highlight. We did have a successful meeting with the Minister of Education recently around education property tax. So there's a commitment there to work with us on looking at, as they're developing a funding model, how something like that could look, and making sure the perspectives of producers are at the table. So we're very pleased at the Minister and the Department's commitment on that. We recently, as well, have been attending a few Chamber of Commerce events. So there was a roundtable focused on internal trade, co-hosted with the federal and provincial governments, as well as some other industries were there. Heavy construction, pork was there with me as well. There was a few others. Excuse me. On the engagement and outreach, we did launch our Ag Matters podcast. The second episode is now out. We've been promoting that on social media and in the KAP alert. So if you haven't seen that yet, please go check out Ag Matters wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, YouTube. Additionally, the Farmer's Voice magazine would have hit your mailboxes recently. That one was in partnership with Emily, not the person from our office, the Emily team there with Jacqueline and others. So that's we were looking at innovation and technology in agriculture. Additionally, we have been putting together our year-end video, which we will be launching at the AGM. So stay tuned for that in February. Which just another reminder to make sure to sign up for the AGM. The link is in the chat. So this year there will be no cost to the AGM, as it will be one day, and a full day of activities. So you can sign up there, and hotel room link is on the website. Additionally, just a quick update, we from the past meeting of advisory, we had a recommendation about the approval of the Manitoba Nursery and Landscape Association as a member, and the board did approve that membership, so they are now members of KAP. I'm not sure if they are on the call, but just wanted to let everybody know that that was the board had moved ahead on that. On safety as well, we've been working with pork closely. I know Morag did join the pork team for a podcast to talk about safety and the resource we created for them with specifically for pork production facilities. And been working closely with the University of Manitoba on supporting the ag students in a few different ways with presentations and some other things that hopefully we can update you on soon. I'm going to now just pass it over to Neil for a policy update. And then we can, if anyone has any quick questions, we're happy to take those as well.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Morning, everyone. My name is Neil Van Overloop, the policy manager at KAP. As Jill previously said, we've been engaged in a number of labor disputes over the last several months. That includes CP, KC, and CN, as well as the grain workers at the Port of Vancouver, as well as the recent labor dispute that was settled by the Minister of Labor yesterday. We've also been working with our partners at CFA regarding the capital gains changes. We provided comments to the Standing Committee on Finance, highlighting our concerns with these recent changes. We've also been working on the right to repair. This summer, the federal government had an online survey about the right to repair. We provided comments to government regarding this. As you're aware, Bills C 244 and C294 recently received royal assent last week. So those are the two bills with the right to repair and interoperability. A few months ago, we sent a joint letter regarding anhydrous ammonia. So Transport Canada was proposing changes to the transportation of anhydrous ammonia. We worked with CFA, Canadian Canola Growers Association, and the Grain Growers of Canada to write a joint letter to the Minister of Transport highlighting our concerns with these proposed amendments. These proposed amendments would have made it costlier for farmers to transport anhydrous ammonia for their farm use. 6 days after we wrote our letter, Transport Canada removed the proposed amendments affecting farmers. Another topic we've been working on involved plant breeders' rights regulations. We provided comments to the CFIA. This included farmers' privilege, the length of plant breeder protection, sale definition, and the cost of filing an application. Comments mostly aligned with the proposals made by the CFIA. The other topic that we've been engaged on involves the Disaster Financial Assistance Program. This summer, the province had an online survey regarding ways to improve this program. Our feedback focused on the definition of an eligible farm business, increasing the $2 million yearly gross revenue cap, improving waiting times, and ensuring consistency between the federal DFA policy and the provincial policy. As well, we met last week with the Deputy Minister to discuss these topics with him, and he anticipates there'll be an announcement sometime next year regarding changes to the program. And finally, we've been engaged with feedback regarding updates to the CUSMA joint review. So both the provincial and federal governments are seeking feedback regarding an upcoming review of this trade agreement. We provided comments to both levels of government. So that's it for the policy update. If there are any questions regarding Colin's presentation or my presentation, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Colin and Neil. I'm just waiting if anyone has any questions. You maybe have time for a couple quick questions at this time on either reports before we go to our first presenter. You want to raise your hand if you have a quick question on either of those reports.
I can't find my hand thing, but if you don't mind,
I
Jill.
saw you looking. Go ahead, David. You have a quick question?
We had discussed the Scientific Based Target Initiative, SBTI, at the environment meeting. Has there been any action in trying to figure out how farmers will align with the goals of reduced emissions as indicated by that SBTI?
Neil?
I don't have any updates regarding that, David, at this point.
Any other questions? You can either raise your hand. If you're looking on your comment section, I think it's under the reactions, the little heart at the bottom of it. If you click on there, it should give you an option to raise your hand if you're looking for where it is. Okay, I don't see any questions and I don't see any comments in the chat or people going to their trying to find. So is our presenter here, Colin?
I'm just looking. I don't see him in the list. He was on earlier, but
Oh,
oh,
okay.
there he is. There he is. He just
Oh,
showed up.
awesome.
Wow. Good
Great.
timing, Todd.
Hey, great. Nice to be here.
Hello, Todd, and welcome again.
Yeah, I know. Long time no see.
I participated for everyone's information. Todd actually presented at the Emily conference last week, where we actually were on a joint panel discussing this very presentation. So we're happy that you're able to join us today and share the information with our members. And certainly, if any of the members here have any questions, then hopefully we've got some time at the end to address those. So I'd like to welcome Todd Jansen, and he is from Data Transparency. I will pass the mic onto yourself. Maybe if you have just a couple intro, just to let us know where you're from and all about data transparency in agriculture.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And so I am originally from the plains of Kansas. I grew up on a beef cattle and grain farm there. Much like a lot of the farms in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but perhaps much smaller. And then I became a lawyer in 2002 and started working in a law firm that had a fair amount of cases involving agriculture. And so I really became an agricultural lawyer. And in 2015, went out with a colleague and started our own firm focusing just on agriculture. And one of our clients that we do work with is called the Ag Data Transparency Evaluator, or Ag Data Transparent. And so I'm here today to talk about that. And Jill, I have some slides I could show, or I can just talk about the project overall. I mean, it's up to you.
No, the slides are up on the screen. You can go ahead if you
Okay.
want to share them.
Yes, I will do that. You can now see this screen. Let me do. All right. Do you see the correct screen? Okay, great. Yeah, so Ag Data Transparent is all about the seal that you see up here on the screen. And so today, this is a presentation that I frequently do with new members of the organization. And so I'll go through some of the highlights for you all who maybe aren't as familiar with what ADT is all about. So yeah, I'll talk about these things today, what ADT is, what we've accomplished so far, and then where we're headed in the future. So the big question first is, of course, what is ADT? What is the Ag Data Transparent? At its core, it is a nonprofit corporation, and so it is actually an entity. It is governed by farmer-led organizations like CFA in Canada, and in the US, American Farm Bureau, and a number of the commodity organizations. We also have board members from the ag tech industry, so they provide input on what is going on. ADT is funded by member contributions in both our certification program and then also in annual dues from other members. And it's led by an administrator, and that's me. So in addition to my full-time job as an agricultural lawyer, I do the administration of the ADT project. So it was founded in 2016, and the original mission of the organization is to provide informational and educational tools to help farmers evaluate data contracts. And so I'm paraphrasing there, but that is really the gist of it. We want to make it easier for farmers to understand the data contracts they're asked to sign. Okay, so the objectives of our nonprofit corporation. One is we try to verify compliance with Ag Data's core principles. And there are about 13 principles that you can find on the ADT website. And I'll get to that more in a little bit. That's really what we're doing, is to see if companies are adhering to those principles or not. So that's the main thing that we do. One of our objectives as well is to improve farmers' trust of the data platforms. I often say we want farmers to use these new tools, so we are trying to create a bridge to usage in allowing farmers to have a better understanding of what these tools do. One of our goals too is to simplify the contracts that farmers are asked to sign and make it easier to understand. And finally, also to provide a resource that farmers can use to evaluate how transparent ag data platforms are. And education is also a big part of what we do. And so that's why, for example, I'm here today is to talk about the issues and what ADT does in this industry. I mentioned we're a membership organization, so just real quickly, we have these different categories of members in the bylaws. So your certified members are the companies that collect data. Industry members are groups like CFA or American Farm Bureau in the US. And then supporting members are groups like Emily that don't collect data, but align with the mission of the ADT. So let's dive in a little bit more about who these members are. So certified members are companies that have been through our certification process about data transparency. And so I have up here on the screen the current list as of today of companies that have been through certification and are current today. So there are others that you might have seen up there before, but maybe they're working on something or they need to renew their dues. And so they have been taken off the screen for now. But a real wide, diverse group of organizations here. If you think about, John Deere is on there. It's quite a bit different than something like, Leaf Services or Traction Ag Services, which is an accounting platform, or Bex Hybrids, which is a seed company. So a real diverse group of companies have been through the certification process. These are the industry members that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So this is the current list. We do have room for others. So if there are other organizations you think should be involved in running the ADT, send them my way and we will see if they're a good fit or not. But pretty diverse group here as well. Growing potatoes is quite a bit different than growing soybeans, but we're happy to have everybody in the same tent. And finally, supporting members. These are companies that align with our mission and have said we want to support ADT, but we don't necessarily collect data. And like McCain Foods is a big one in Canada, I know, that does see the value in data and understanding how farmers grow the food that it puts on people's tables, but is not on the front lines of collecting data directly from farmers through a data platform. So they've said, we want to be a supporting member. All right, so how does the certification work? This is a real brief synopsis of what it looks like. If somebody says we want to become certified as ADT compliant, we have an initial meeting with them. I'll meet with them online. They create an ADT account. They have to sign an agreement to participate. And then we go through our 11Q process. And our 11Q is the 11-question form that we ask companies to fill out and complete. And these are questions about how they use data. And so we're talking about, for example, what types of data do you collect? They have to answer a question explaining that. What is your position on data ownership and who owns data that you collect? They have to answer a question about that. We take all those answers, those 11 answers, and we review them based upon the contracts that these companies ask farmers to sign. And at the end of that process, we send it back to them and we will tell them, okay, you have transparently answered all these questions. They align with what you have in your data contracts. And so we will issue you the certification and you can use the Ag Data Transparent seal on your website, on your platform, wherever you are marketing to farmers. If there is a snag and we hit a problem where the company doesn't align with a core principle, or the contracts say something different than what is in their 11Q, we go back to them and we explain this and we try to come up with a solution. And so we are not in the business of being the policeman. We are in the business of trying to get companies to comply with the certification standards. So it is not a process that exposes the bad actors in the industry. It's a process that tries to get everybody to be a good actor. So some of the other things that the ADT has done, I mentioned, we have a set of core principles that we post online and we want companies to follow. These came out in 2014 through industry discussions with American Farm Bureau at the lead and others. And then in 2024, we released an updated version. And so we thought after 10 years, it made sense to go back and figure out, where have things changed, what issues have changed for farmers. And so we did an update to that, and you can find that on the Ag Data Transparent website, which is actually on this screen right here. So if you're looking for what ADT, or how to find more about ADT, that's where you go. Okay, so other key accomplishments. Really, the certification is the lead accomplishment. I would say the big thing that ADT does. If you know companies that should be going through certification, you can send them my way or direct them to the ADT website, and they can start the process. People often ask, how long does it take? It really varies from, I'd say, a couple weeks to a half a year or so, depending on how involved the company is in the process and how much time lingers between going back and forth on issues that come up. Another big accomplishment, thing that the ADT has taken on, we created a model data agreement. Because there were many startup companies that wanted to know, how do we do things correctly, right? How do we collect data, share data in a way that is transparent with the farmer? And so we thought, well, we shouldn't just have companies try to figure this out on their own. Let's give them a template. Let's give them a suggestion for how to do it. And so we created this model data agreement. Some companies have implemented it wholesale. Others have implemented it and then given it their own tweaks. And you'll see some companies call something like this a data agreement. Others will call it a data use policy that they follow. But whatever they call it, if they've adopted some version of this, then it makes it really simple to go through that 11Q form, because this was designed with that in mind, with the certification in mind. And so it checks all those boxes for, you can see on the screen, for example, how data is collected, what information is collected, and so on. All right, so looking ahead to 2025, it's hard to believe we're already there. But in 2025, some of the things we have on our agenda, in addition to, we're always trying to get more companies to go through certification. So hopefully we see more companies come in the front door and do that. We will also do another update to the model data agreement, because it's been about 5 years now since we first put that out. And this is, like all technologies, it's an evergreen process, and things are always changing and updating. We'll also start to look at ways to improve the 11Q form, and are there things that we should be asking that we're not. I have on here a 10 Commodity Classic. That's a big event in the US where we have a stage and we talk about ADT and the issues for farmers. And then we also do webinars periodically for new members and others who are interested in the ADT. these next few slides are more geared towards existing members, so I will probably skip over them. But for companies that do join ADT, we do try to offer a lot of other support and help them promote their use of the seal. And so I'll skip through these slides pretty quickly. Our contact information, if you have questions, I'll leave that up there on the screen for just a couple minutes. But that really is an overview of the ADT in a nutshell. And so I will advance on. I see there are a couple things in the chat. So I don't know if those are questions for me or if those are questions for someone else. But let me stop there and turn it back to Jill to see if there are questions that I can ask from the group.
Sure. Thanks very much, Todd. This partnership is new with CFA. So we were in the courtship phase last year, and then this year with approval through CFA and our meetings, a brand new member to this association. So certainly any input from farmers through us, through CFA, we are going to be at the table with those other member associations to provide guidance or questions from producers. Totally I guess, and I echo that last statement, as far as creating that transparency and maybe simplicity from a producer standpoint to encourage usage of these data platforms that are available for us as producers to make us better at the end of the day. So maybe I'll let Colin help as well if there's any questions in the chat, or raise your hand. Certainly we can entertain some questions. We've got about 10 minutes here, 10-15 minutes for some questions. So if anyone has any at this time.
David's
Quiet.
got his hand up, Jill.
Pardon me? Oh, David does. Great. I was going to say quiet group. Thanks for breaking the ice, David. Go ahead.
One of the things that we're going to be facing going into the future is initiatives to get to net zero by 2050. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's an initiative called the Scientific Based Target Initiative that lets companies register to make commitments to pledges towards a net zero by 2050. There's scope 1, 2, and 3 emission levels, and the supply chain that farmers are involved in is scope 3, and that can be 70 to 90% of the total for a food company like Nestle's. Nestle's made that commitment, and then about a year ago in July, they decided that they were not going to use or could not use carbon offsets to get to a net zero level, and that they would actually make emission reductions. And that would also, of course, apply to their scope 3. So you get involved with any of those kind of, I don't know if there's contracts to that level yet, in terms of commitments of farmers to achieving net zero.
Yes, I do get involved in those. Not as much on the ADT side. I mean, we do have a couple of carbon platforms that have been certified members, and so they've said we want to we want to make sure that we're being transparent with our farmers, and so that's great that we've seen that, and they've been big supporters of the ADT. And then, on more of a personal note, I mean, as an agricultural lawyer, I have been involved in reviewing contracts for companies that are involved in this space. I've read, I work with a lot of dairy farmers, and I have had the chance to review some of their milk supply contracts and see how those net zero initiatives trickle down to the farm, you could say. So I'm familiar with them from that standpoint.
So it's kind of in its infancy in terms of those initiatives. Yep.
Yep, I would agree.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the group? If you're shy and just want to type something in the chat, we're monitoring that as well. I don't think we have shy ones in this group. Maybe not enough coffee this morning yet. Well, I guess, Todd, that's it for questions.
Well, we can't let them go that easy.
Okay, well, okay, David, you have another one. I didn't know if that was a legacy hand. Go ahead.
No, can you give us examples of some of the more major data contracts that farmers would be getting involved in?
And by major, tell me more what you mean by that.
Ones that may have either fairly large positive or negative connotations to whether or not the farmer wins in the end, I guess, or benefits.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there are really all different levels of contracts with farmers. Some that have been through the certification are very targeted to certain areas, you know, that perhaps it's a financial platform. And so it's really driving at things like cost of production, stuff like that. And then you have other platforms that are much broader in scope, like I'd say like the John Deere Operations Center is one where it's really more of a sort of hub and spoke situation where it is the main data collection point, but then you have all these integration partners and apps that interface with it. So it's almost more like the Apple App Store. And those are very, I'd say, different uses of ag data. And I'm not here to say one is better or worse than the other, but there certainly are differences in how that data is used internally and how it's had the ability to share it externally. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but that's what I've seen.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Colin.
Just we just had a message from the chat. Jen Seward just wanted to let everyone know the Canadian Seed Growers Association is pending certification. So that's good news to have another Canadian group on there. And just I also wanted to mention Ag Expert and Combine are both ADT certified, and those are companies that KAP does have agreements with for member benefits. So I just wanted to highlight that as well.
Great. I'm still watching the screen here. I don't see any other hands. Colin, do you see any other hands or mentions? No? Well, I guess, Todd, we're letting you off the hook with 2 questions, but I'm sure going forward, maybe some questions will come up in our district annual meetings when we have some additional members there that are wondering about it. And certainly we will encourage members to check out the website so that they can get some additional information on platforms that they might use, whether or not they are certified, and give them the nudge to look into becoming certified. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Nice to see everyone. All right, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And we are a little ahead of schedule, but I see that Joanne is on the screen, I think. Neil, there you are, waving. Great. So we will move on to the next item that is on our agenda, and it's leveraging ecosystems to transform agriculture on the prairies. LEAP. We welcome you here to give us update, Joanne. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jill. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I know some of the people in this virtual meeting space, but not nearly all of you. Let me introduce myself just a little bit. My name's Joanne Thiessen-Martens. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Soil Science at the University of Manitoba, and part of a group that's led by Martin Entz that is just initiating this project called LEAP, as Jill has introduced. My background is, so I actually used to work with Martin Entz as a research technician and research associate for quite a long time, and then did my doctoral studies just a few years ago, and then got this faculty position focusing on soil fertility. So doing some phosphorus research and some other agro-ecosystem type research with cover crops and other things, but also embarking on this very exciting project. I'll also just say that Martin Entz sends his regrets. He was planning to be the one to be here and invited me to come in his place, but he brings greetings to everyone as well. Now, is it okay if I share my my screen to
I'm getting a nod from Colin, Joanne, so.
okay, great. Just let me get this set up then. Hey, can you all see that? Oh, share. There, is that showing up for you now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So I want to just briefly tell you about this project, but then give lots of times for your questions and thoughts about it. One of our central tenets of this project is that it is a co-designed project, and that we're working very closely with our partners to gain their insights, to make sure that the work we're doing is relevant and applicable. At the same time, we are challenging ourselves and all of our partners to think beyond kind of tweaking at the edges of agricultural systems and to be bold. And that's why the word, transform is in our title, and that we have this just slightly awkward acronym, but that leads to the term LEAP, where we do think there is perhaps, a big shift in perspective that is required for long-term sustainability in agriculture. So we just overall, the project in general, we are exploring pathways to net zero agriculture in a spirit of farm participation and reconciliation with Indigenous communities. And that involves moving from what we've called an exploitative sort of perspective with people in some cases, and also with our lands, in that, when settlers first came here to the prairies, there was this incredibly rich soil that we were able to essentially exploit to our benefit for a good number of decades before we kind of started running into major troubles, right? And so the idea is to move to more of a resilient, relational type of agricultural system where we are incorporating more diversity. We are being more strategic about the types of disturbances that we use, and a more integrated approach with livestock and crops. And that ultimately leads us towards, at least, who knows if we'll actually be able to achieve net zero agriculture, but at least towards that goal. We see doing this in a few different steps, and these are not that here we do step one, then we finish that one off, and then we go on to step two. This is more of a cycle or a flow or an interweaving maybe of different processes, but for the sake of explaining them, they are well described as steps. So the first thing that we really want to do, and this is the part of the project I'm most involved in, is on the left here, called step one, understanding the lived experiences and the aspirations of both settler and Indigenous farmers, and especially the part building on prairie farm innovation and understanding what is. What that means is that we want to collect a whole mountain of data from farms across the black soil zone of the Eastern Prairies, so all over agricultural Manitoba, into kind of east central Saskatchewan, I guess, and see how the systems that farmers have been implementing already for some time are performing in terms of some of these goals, whether that's net zero, supporting biodiversity, as well as some of our more traditional goals like productivity and profitability and that kind of thing. So we want to understand both how they function ecologically. So lots of soil sampling going on, plant sampling in terms of crop performance, but also diversity and like floral resources for insects and that kind of thing. We have entomologists involved trying to understand the pests as well as the beneficial organisms in those systems. We have a microbiologist that will be looking at all kinds of different the microbes involved in different kind of soil carbon and nitrogen transformations, that kind of thing. But then linked to that, also understanding how the people that manage those systems think about them, how they feel about them, why they do certain practices, what are the barriers to change and that kind of thing. Then step 2 is this, what we're calling the exploring these what if scenarios, and specifically how we could implement them. So there's some plot related research with that, practices for establishing pollinator strips in fields, for example, grazing, cover crops, some examples like that. And then we go to step 3, where we really want to test a bunch of these what if scenarios. We are planning to envision a bunch of scenarios with help from our formal partners in this project, of which KAP is one, and also with individual farmers or focus groups, and run them through this HOLOS model that's been developed by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada that characterizes the greenhouse gas and carbon footprint of a particular production system at the field scale. And you can use HOLOS. It doesn't think of scenarios for you like some models do. You have to think of the scenario yourself, but you can run it through the model and it'll tell you how it performs in terms of its net zero goals. And then in step 4, we really want to bring this into the policy sphere so that we can come up with guidance that is not only aimed at people who are on the land and managing these systems, but also those who support them in various ways, whether that's through economic policies, support programs for BMPs, or whatever it is. And that's very open at this point because we really don't know yet what those policies may be. But that's definitely a focus of the project. So I'm not going to go through all of this. This sort of describes all the things in more detail that I just told you about. But the point is that all these activities are very much linked to each other. So we have these 5 streams. Oh, the one that I didn't really mention in detail is the First Nations case study, really focusing on the drivers of using more perennial types of land cover and other agricultural and kind of integrated practices on reserve lands. I sort of mentioned all of these other ones. The point is that all these groups are constantly talking to each other. Some of the farmers that are involved in what we're calling the landscape analysis, seeing how these farms perform, will also be involved in the community engagement activities where we try to understand why people are using those certain practices and so on. And the field studies are linked to what we're finding in what farmers are doing right now. So they all the different activities build on each other. And those future farm scenarios up in the top left are really built on what we're seeing in all the different other activities of the project. As I said, this is very much a participatory co-design approach, working with our partners. We have this big network of partners. We are really relying on you for insights and direction. And so we hope to, that's part of the reason I'm here today, is to introduce the project to you so that we can develop, continue to develop agriculture for Manitoba and strengthen it. The little images here are just an example that Martin Nance likes to share on the development of no-till research, how it went from basically, can we do this? Then to, in the 90s, then, advancing, fine-tuning the practices, and then later on, integrating other types of goals into the zero-till system and strengthening it that way. I am going to kind of skip over some of these fairly quickly, but just point out the people that are involved in these different activities. So the farmer engagement part of it is led by Dr. Megan King and Dr. Kyle Babawash, both from the University of Manitoba. Then activity 2, the First Nations self-determined farming systems, led by Dr. Melissa Arcan from University of Saskatchewan, as well as, again, Dr. Kyle Babawash. They are both Indigenous scholars and have connections in these communities. Melissa in particular has been working with various First Nations in Saskatchewan already on different types of soil health initiatives and that sort of thing. I have more information on all these ones that I'm sort of skipping over if you want more on those in the question time. Then I'll tell you just a little bit more about this landscape analysis activity that I am leading. I have a whole team of people with me doing this. There's 12 of us working on this activity. So lots going on. This is, like I was saying, where we're going out to these farms. And this is where, going out to these farms to collect all this data. This is where we are really relying on our partners quite a bit. We've been reaching out to help identify potential farm sites for data collection. We're envisioning sort of 3 different levels of participation for growers. And each of those will have a different level of intensity of sampling, but all of them are intended to capture what is going on these farms across this range, or what we're calling a perenniality gradient. So the word perennial is embedded in there, with the idea that we are interested in whether systems that have more perennial features in them, whether those are actual perennial crops like forages, or if they are something that mimics a perennial, like lots of cover cropping in the shoulder seasons, having those living roots, that kind of thing, or even just more diversity through intercropping. Along a gradient, we recognize these aren't just categories of production, right? There's some nuance there. The idea is we want to see whether how the simple annual types of systems compare to some of the diversified perennial systems, and especially those ones that are sort of in between in how they perform on a bunch of different measures. So we have these sites that we're calling our gold sites. There will be 6 fields only in this gold category. One that's a simple annual system, still like a good crop rotation. We're not talking about someone who's only growing canola or something like that year after year, but a standard sort of annual crop rotation that we see in the prairies, versus one that has more diversity built in, sort of an intermediate system, versus one that is more in long-term perennials. We have lots of assumptions about how those will fare in certain categories. Like we kind of assume the annual system will probably be more productive in terms of crop yields, perhaps more profitable. We expect that the perennial one will probably fare a little better on some of the soil health parameters, but not necessarily. These intermediate ones, we really have almost no idea about how those ones will fare. So that's why we want to really investigate this continuum. Those sites will, let's go to this next slide briefly, will be outfitted with some sophisticated equipment. These flux towers that will be measuring carbon flux, so the carbon that's being drawn down into the soil by the crop, or into the crop, I guess specifically, water fluxes, all that kind of thing. We will be measuring nitrous oxide emissions on those 6 fields as well with these type of chambers where we collect gas samples periodically to see what the emissions are. And then a whole host of other parameters. So all kinds of different soil properties, plant productivity, the community, in the forage field, the weeds, those kinds of things, arthropods. So those are insects, diversity, stability, the services they provide, as well as some farm management info collected through interviews, some farmer demographics, and then general site properties. That's the gold sites, that first column now. The silver sites are taking a similar approach, but without all the instrumentation, but we want to collect all those different properties, and those will be scattered all over in that region. And then we have bronze sites where the focus is really on the farmer rather than the field, but we want to collect a little bit of data from their fields as well. So there's still some question marks on what exactly we're going to be collecting from these sites. And that's because, as I said, this is a work in progress. We want to find out what's important to farmers and then collect data accordingly. The next group we have is this net zero farming system studies led by Dr. Yvonne Lawley. These are essentially plot scale studies that will focus on a whole variety of things, including things like grazing in cover crops, a bunch of the things that are listed here that can feature, some are existing studies that we can capture data from to help answer some of these questions, and others are new studies that are going to be developed for the purpose of this experiment. We are planning to, Yvonne is planning to establish a new cover cropping system study together with Marissa Borgo at the U of S and Melissa Arcand also at U of S. And this is a new study where we can really put in treatments that are of interest to farmers. And so if you have thoughts on that, I encourage you to let me know, and we can, they're still in the process of designing that study right now. They're also looking at things like, I mentioned before, how to establish a perennial pollinator habitat strip and those kinds of things. And then our last team, the Future Farm Scenarios, is led by Dr. Marcos Cordero from the University of Manitoba in the Department of Animal Science, but he is a agro-ecosystem modeler. And as well, Roland Krobel from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and the whole team that has developed this HOLOS model is going to be working on that. And like I said, that is basically to test these future farm scenarios that we're developing through the rest of the project and see how they fare based on the that HOLOS model. And then we have Dr. Michelle Karkner is working with us to really on the partnerships. She's the one that reached out to KAP originally to bring you on board with the project. We have a lot of different partners, and the partners are a really key part of this project because I won't go through all of this in detail, but you can see the breadth of the partners that we have from, you know, the livestock sector, crop sectors, as well as some of the environmental NGOs and sort of the people-focused groups as well. And then all the different types of ways that those partners work. And those eventually lead us to be able to think about, you know, policies, as well as the practices and the social circumstances that support a healthy agricultural sector in Manitoba and beyond, with all kinds of different positive outcomes for the sector. I will leave it at that. maybe I'll keep my slides up just for a moment in case anyone wants me to go into more detail on any of this, but I invite your questions and comments about this initiative.
Thank you very much, Joanne. I'll maybe pass the mic over on to Colin here to see maybe if he can handle emceeing the questions or watching for people if there are any questions.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'll monitor the chat. If anyone has any questions, raise your hand. And Joanne, just quickly, I actually saw Michelle here in Brandon at the MFGA meeting. She was presenting. Are you still looking for producers to join any of these trials or sites? And if so, how can they get involved?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I should have included my little QR code. Yes, we are just in the process of finalizing those gold sites that I was talking about. Those are the ones that have the most specific requirements, as in like what kind of soil type we want them on and those kinds of things. So I think we're okay on that front, but we are going to be looking for farmers to host these, what we call the silver sites, and also eventually to participate in this farmer well-being study that the engagement team is leading. We're not actively recruiting for that yet because they are, there's kind of an initial step there. I'll tell you about that in just one moment. But yes, if you want to get in touch with us, if you just search for University of Manitoba LEAP project, it'll take you to our website, and on there is a how to get involved thing, and there's a little link to a survey if you are interested in having us come and sample on your farm. You can fill out, it has a bunch of questions about what types of cropping systems you have right now. Those are just sort of screening so that we kind of know what to expect. That data that you enter there is not, it's not used in the research as such. It's just to help us understand what your farm is like. But yeah, feel free to go and fill that out. Then in the meantime, in the engagement team, so Dr. King and Dr. Babawash are just in the process. They're going to be organizing some, I think they're calling them like coffee chats or something with different producer groups, different kind of focused by sector, I believe. And so you may hear more about that. The idea is to talk with farmers first about what's important to them, and then that will actually guide the types of questions that are used in the formal farmer well-being, kind of the social science side of the project.
Great.
Thank you.
Great question, Colin. And for you on the call, that link is actually in the chat as well.
Thank you.
And if you are having problems, I am sure that if you contact either Neil or Colin at the office after, we can make sure that we can make that connection. And we for sure will bring that link information to the district meetings that are going to be happening here in the month, so that we can encourage some dialogue with farmers, with your department and individuals, Joanne.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just watching the screen here for any questions from the group.
I will just say that we welcome feedback of all kinds. Constructive, of course, is great, but we recognize that sometimes the things that we're proposing may seem strange, maybe not useful at first glance, and so we'd be happy to talk with anyone who has concerns about our approach or anything as well. So please reach out.
And thank you again for being here. I know in that research space, it's difficult to make that producer researcher connection, to bring some of the, like you mentioned, what's happening at the farm. So we're really happy to be a part of, the discussion and be involved, and certainly at this level to encourage farmer producers to engage at that level as well, because it's at the end of the day, you know, it's the right way to approach policy, right from science and innovation from the ground up. So thank you very much for your presentation today.
It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
We do have a question, Jill. I
Oh.
was waiting, David. I was waiting for you to put your hand
Oh,
up.
yeah. There
I
we
was
are.
waiting for somebody else to go, but um, as Joanne knows, I'm, or maybe that doesn't know, I'm nearly at the defense stage for my thesis, and the thesis is called "In Search of Net Positive Carbon Grain Farming in the Northern Great Plains." So there's some similarities of what I've just done versus what Martin and Joanne and others are going to be doing. And I purposely stayed away from transformation and stayed with change, because when it comes to getting farmers to leave their investment of what they have, particularly in grain farms, to consider other options, I think that's a big step. And you know, what can we do to bring those grain farms in line with net zero? And so that's one of the differences, and I'd like to discuss that with you later in more length. But I tried to find 12 innovative net positive farmers, as I call them, and then find out what they were doing, which is similar to what you're doing. And when I first started, I was going to find the most innovative, which of course is ridiculous. But I did find a couple of net positive farmers, and it depends how you define particularly carbon sequestration, how that balances against their net emissions. Or not net emissions, but their emissions is relatively easy. It's the carbon sequestration part that becomes quite difficult. So I guess the question is, how do you find that innovation that might lead you forward into the I shouldn't say correct what if scenarios, but plausible, practical, pragmatic solutions?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's something that I think we've been wrestling with. And in particular, we are pretty sure that this is not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. And that's why, particularly in our assessment of the different types of farming systems, we are trying to cover a lot of ground and see what is perhaps most suitable. And I shouldn't even use the word most suitable. What is more suitable in certain regions, soil types, topography, economic kind of, maybe there's a social component too, like, you know, in terms of the number of people that are available to work on a farm versus the size of the farm, integrate, yeah, mixed operations, all those kinds of things. So I guess looking for options that lead to improvement. And I want to just touch briefly on the transformation versus change thing, and recognizing that change on farms is almost always necessarily kind of slow because of the big capital investments that people have. But that the transformation that we're envisioning is maybe more in how we think about those systems, our attitudes towards them, in terms of making that leap, right? Where incremental changes in thinking, we suspect may not be enough. So it requires that perhaps a big change in mindset, not only from producers, but also from government, the industry as a whole, on what we want to support. And I think that will then support those changes that will happen, that will need to happen incrementally in most cases at the farm level. So that said, there are some farmers who make dramatic changes in a short period of time, and it's always interesting to learn from those people. But definitely this is not a one-size-fits-all type of situation, and we're really hoping to find those locally adapted solutions or that move us in a good direction.
One of the things that I found that kind of drives this net zero possibility is that a couple of farmers use either no or very little nitrogen fertilizer, fossil fuel based nitrogen fertilizer, and unless they can, and they still have comparable crops to their neighbors, so they're relying on a biological nitrogen. The two most successful ones are from brown soil zones, where perhaps they don't need quite as much nitrogen anyway, but have more limited ability to make it biologically, but they seem to balance it out. So what kind of things are you doing that would make a difference in terms of replacing fossil fuel based nitrogen?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of biological nitrogen fixation, integrating legumes into rotations. How best to do that, I think, is still an open question. There's, the kind of traditional system of annual legume forages rotated with annual crops that mixed farms would still do, but those mixed farms are, of course, getting ever more scarce in our region. There's the classic organic farmer approach where you grow a green manure crop that takes a whole season and then you live off of that for a couple of years. Not probably viable in most of our acres in terms of maintaining the productivity of the system as a whole. But then perhaps there are ways to be constantly applying or adding a little bit of nitrogen fixation by integrating more pulses in our crop rotations, but also through cover cropping. I have a master's student looking at establishing alfalfa or various types of clovers, white clover, red clover, sweet clover, in the same pass as seeding wheat in the spring. And then the idea is to allow that to continue to grow as a living mulch in the following year. As we've discovered, so the focus of the study was not on the management to achieve that living mulch thing, and we sort of missed the mark there. But we have seen that it is possible. She tested this at all the diversification centers across Manitoba in some dry years and a wetter year. So in 2023 and 2024, got decent establishment and good regrowth over the fall and the early spring period. So it's not a silver bullet, certainly. It's not going to reduce our nitrogen fertilizer needs to zero. That's certainly true, but maybe we can chip away at some of those nitrogen needs, as well as thinking about, the fact that a lot of our nitrogen fertilizer N is lost in various processes, so even those simple 4R fertilizer management systems that are simple to think about, but sometimes complicated to actually apply in real life. So finding ways to optimize those can certainly help as well.
Hey, thanks. We'll talk more later.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you, David, for the questions, and thank you, Joanne. I'm just looking here on the screen to see if we have any additional comments or questions. Daryl, we have another hand. Thanks,
Thanks,
Daryl.
Jill. I'll try and be quick. I guess as a representative of a commodity organization, and I've chatted with Martin about this, I think it's fair to put on the table here that some of the policy outcomes that are being sought, I think in the minds of producers that sit around the commodity groups, some of those policy priorities had already been injected into particularly federal research funding programs. So for example, if you propose a project on cover cropping and some of the practices that are thought to reduce emissions, you can get 70-30 matching from the government. If you propose something like improving disease resistance of crops, you'll get 50-50. So there's a bias towards that. The point I want to make is that the response from the commodity group community has been in strong opposition to that kind of policy. In addition, the federal government has been trying to develop a sustainable ag strategy, the first iteration of which included many of the things that are being researched. So in this project, again, participants around that table strongly opposed many of those things. Now, part of the problem they had is that the government was putting these things in after or before the results of projects like this were out. So that's their mistake. But I'd have to also say that that the momentum towards where commodity groups prefer to put their research dollars is in areas that aren't related to some of these systems, but are actually related to the constant adoption of new technologies to improve productivity. I think we need a conversation in this whole area, particularly in Manitoba, where a lot of the public plant breeding, at least at the university level, is elsewhere. We're not in daily communication with university type plant breeders in this province because they exist mostly elsewhere. You know, I just think that we need to have a conversation on these things, because the farm groups are going in different directions, and there's a mixed kind of sense. Finally, I'll just say I participated in Agri-Food Innovation Council call last week with Warren Steinley, who's the shadow cabinet member responsible for agriculture in the opposition in Ottawa right now, and my sense was that his perspective on the future of ag research is much more in line with that the national commodity groups are supporting. Suffice to say, I think you know, I eagerly await the outcomes of this project, because I think government policy does need to be informed. But I guess what I'm also saying is that I think it's going to be a struggle. And I think there's lots of things aligned against this kind of thing. And we'll wait and see what the science says, but there's going to be a lot of competing political and scientific debates. And I think Manitoba farmers should be really at the table around these things.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Daryl, and I really appreciate that. And I am in no way trying to kind of diminish the importance of that type of the type of research that you are referring to, that technology, the plant breeding, dealing with all of those sort of everyday issues that farmers are facing, and where there are relatively attainable solutions that can be enacted and adopted quite quickly on farms. Absolutely, that is important. And that's where I think in the past there has been, at least from my perspective, in you know, trying to attain research funding, for example, that's the type of research that has been more traditionally supported for universities to get involved in, university researchers. This type of grant that we have received it comes from the NSERC, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, and SHRC, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, as well as Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. This type of research that specifically called for bold, transformative ideas is very rare. And I think it really, if anything, complements the other type of research that the commodity groups are really interested in that type of those types of advances that can be adopted more quickly. So I guess I would say I welcome those conversations about short-term versus long-range goals. All of us, I think, no matter, from everyday life to big questions around sustainability, are wrestling with, those immediate urgent things that just need to be dealt with versus our long-term goals and where we want to end up eventually, and improving systems, lives around us. So it's where the diversity, I think, again, is beneficial, right? We need all those kinds of research. And, there's, I think, 9 or 10 of these projects that have been approved across Canada that all focus on slightly different areas. Some are more kind of on the ground, more implementable, kind of right away types of solutions. Others are a bit more blue sky type research like this one. And honestly, I think we need all those ideas. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, for those comments. And thank you, Daryl, for the question. Are there any other questions, comments? Yes, seeing none, conscious of the time, not wanting to rush, but if there's no other questions, I want to again thank you, Joanne, for bringing an update on some valuable research that is occurring, and thank you again for allowing us to be a part of that discussion, being at the table. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we will now move to number 7 on our agenda, which is resolutions. And I guess on behalf of Colin, there were not any resolutions presented to the resolution committee. Colin Penner is the chair of the resolutions committee. Colin, were there any others today to consider, or your
Nope.
job?
No, there haven't been any other resolutions, Jill.
Okay, thank you. Wanted to give you a chance to speak as chair. Okay, so with that, we will actually move on to more importantly, cross-provincial update and give individuals from districts to bring forward any challenges or things that are happening in your region, as well as I do have a list of the commodity groups that are here today to give their update. Maybe what I'll do is I'll switch it up. I'll start with the commodity groups today. So I'll Jennifer from Manitoba Seed Growers for a brief update from your organization.
Hi, Jill. Thanks. I wasn't expecting to be the launch off.
Hey, I'm switching it up.
It's never boring with you, Jill. I don't really have a whole lot to share today to this committee. As far as we're hearing so far, seed supplies and quality have been coming in pretty good. Some pretty dry soybeans were a bit of a challenge this fall. So that'll be something that we'll be watching moving forward. Our AGM is coming up December 11th and 12th in Winnipeg. There'll be more information on our website shortly with our agenda and registrations. And otherwise, we're just getting ready for, the busy fall-winter meeting seasons.
Great. Glad that you're able to attend today, Jennifer. Pam Durockney from Manitoba Crop Alliance.
Actually, Lee Smith, who's one of our directors, will be presenting on behalf of MCA. Thanks,
Okay,
Jill.
great. Go ahead, Lee.
Good morning, everybody. Lee Smith with MCA. I'm out of Oak Lake. I guess we have a few things to update. Our research, production, and extension programs. We are in the process of hiring an agronomist in residence for special crops at the University of Manitoba. This is important for supporting and expanding the corn, sunflower, and flax industries in Manitoba. We also had a couple of staff members travel south of the border to develop a mutual beneficial research collaboration and investment opportunities with North Dakota University, the North Dakota Corn Council, and National Sunflower Association. Manitoba Crop Alliance is also a proud supporter and mentor of the next generation of farmers and researchers and industry professionals through our bursary program, which was handed out or announced on the 15th of October. Upcoming MCA events and publications. We have our biannual newsletter, the Fence Post, coming out. The Focal Point, which is a research magazine that will be mailed out to our members in February of 25. And our producer, the Malt Academy at the Barley Technical Center will be being held on November 21st. This is I attended this last year, and this was a great program. If you're interested in how beer is made, and it gets right into the science of all of it, and there's a lot to learn, and it's a wonderful event. So I would encourage anybody to attend this one. Of course, we have Manitoba Ag Days coming up, and we will be sponsoring a speaking session on Wednesday, the 22nd in the afternoon. Of course, Crop Connects will be coming up on the 12th and 13th of February. We will also be having our annual meeting at the Crop Connects in the morning of the 13th at 7:45. To entice everybody to come, we'll be having our nice breakfast. So I encourage everybody to come out for that. It'll be a good meeting. Combine to customer events with Cereals Canada is a 3-day event. And if you're a farmer or in the grain industry, this is a great event for you to learn the ins and outs of marketing the qualities of Canadian grains with Cereals Canada. Of course, all this information can be found on our website, and I encourage everybody to go there. So for consumer outreach, we've also proud to support for the 35th year the Great Taste of Manitoba. And so we include, we produce beer and we produce seed segments with the Manitoba Crop Alliance. And of course, we also have the Crop Advance Payment Program. So if people are interested in that, they can contact the office. And I would encourage everybody to follow us on social media, and that'll keep you up to date on what's going on at Manitoba Crop Alliance. Thank you.
Thanks,
Pam,
Lee.
did you have anything more, Pam, that I missed?
Great. We'll move on to Manitoba Pork. Marg is on the call today. Mark?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just a couple of things. We are very pleased that our province has stayed disease-free from PED virus, which typically would resurface in the normal cycle in 2024. And touch wood, so far we're free. We do, as producers, though, have a concern about a transfer rest stop facility at Thunder Bay, because there are a fair number of market hogs coming to Manitoba for slaughter because of lack of capacity in Ontario. And of course, they need that travel time is too long to be undertaken without a rest stop. That happens at Thunder Bay in a very old facility with an earth floor, so it cannot be cleaned and disinfected the way we do our own facilities. And And Ontario does have PDV and also a few other viruses that we're somewhat concerned about entering Manitoba. We're not sure what the long-term solution is in that case, but it's certainly something that we're very vigilant about, and ongoing testing happens all the time. One of our top concerns has to do with trade, kind of brought to the fore with the US election campaign, and also thinking ahead to the renegotiation of CUSMA next year and what that could mean for our sector. In Manitoba, the pork sector depends very, very heavily on smooth exports. And so that's a major area of concern for us right now. As part of our communication strategies and options, we are now in the podcast arena, so you can check out those topics and options at our website if you're interested in that. And just finally, I will say we appreciate very, very much our relationship with agriculture in the classroom, and the options we've had there in terms of encouraging employment for students to consider employment in agriculture and in livestock production. And also one example of a project that is where demand is exceeding supply actually is with meal kits that feature a particular pork recipe. That's been very, very popular with schools, and teachers have a big uptake on that. So that's positive as one part of many, many components in getting our message of food production to particularly urban students who may not have access to much of that knowledge on a daily basis. So I will leave it at that.
Great, thanks, Marg. Daryl from Pulse Growers.
Okay, thanks, Jill. 2024 proved to be good yields for soybeans and dry beans. I think soybeans actually might achieve a record. It was just a good year for them. Dry peas, a little bit less so, a lot more variability. High moisture in the spring is never good for peas. Lots of movement of soybeans right early here in the year. I think, I'm not sure, but China, I know, was loading up on soybeans ahead of some potential changes to the trade environment there. The container port strikes at Montreal, Vancouver do have resonate here because some of our dry beans do move through containers. Those that don't move south by truck move through containers to a number of countries around the world. So the recent action by government to solve that is welcome. I should mention that this summer we were able to do about 60 on-farm trials and surveyed about 200 fields across the province for diseases of dry beans, soybeans, and peas. There's a very busy on the trade front on an ongoing basis. Canola is not the only concern with China because of trade actions taken in the refined pea protein space, both in the US and proposed or investigated actions in Canada. Pulse Canada has had to take some steps to ensure that business-to-business relations in the plant protein and pea export market remain solid, because there's concern over China also countervailing imports of Canadian peas. Likewise, on India, India's been in the news for a long time, and the diplomatic issues between India and Canada, and it's not really a concern to Manitoba, but the lentil trade with India is substantial, and Saskatchewan is particularly concerned about that. So between China and India, a lot of oxygen is being taken up to maintain trade relations while governments figure out how they're going to behave. It was mentioned that the MCA is pursuing an agronomist in residence at the University of Manitoba. We're currently pursuing one at Assiniboine College to work on some very applied pest management and pesticide management work. it's a big gap in our research capacity here in Manitoba. So we're starting a position at Assiniboine College to look at some simple research to inform pesticide selection and use advice for growers. And that adds to the agronomist in residence that we've had at the University of Manitoba for some years. I should add that I think that raises the whole question of farmers paying for positions at universities and colleges to get things done that they'd like to see done. And I think that's a question that we need to bring to a table like KAP and discuss, because it's become a trend. And is it the right trend? I'm not sure. Trade in soybean, as I mentioned, has been brisk, but there's a longer term thing at play with respect to the growing soybean crush capacity in North Dakota. And there is potential for us to ship soybeans to North Dakota and have a backhaul of soy meal to particularly our pork industry here in Manitoba. However, that's not necessarily something that's guaranteed. And the American Soybean Export Council is coming here in January to visit with us, and I believe Manitoba Pork, to discuss that potential growth in trade. There are some headwinds. There's a bill before lawmakers in the U.S. With respect to there's a program to support renewable diesel production, and whether or not imported feedstocks should be eligible. That's a question on top of the more recent questions that have been posed as a result of the U.S. election. Just what will trade in soybean to the south look like in 2025? And so that's a critical issue for us. We ship soybeans around the world. It sure be nice to be able to ship more just across the line. But there are people on that side who wouldn't invite that. So we're dealing with that. Just an interesting thing happening in the bean industry. We're working with our sister groups across Canada and with Pulse Canada to increase the market within Canada. And to that end, next week we're holding a session with institutional food service providers, those people that provide foods to hospitals and schools and universities and prisons and a number of things like that, as well as the restaurant trade, specifically in the Greater Toronto Area, the GTA, to try and encourage them to look at beans and Canadian-grown beans as a really cost-effective, nutritious, and sustainable option, for their menus. Finally, we've been also, like other groups, working with Great Tastes of Manitoba, and we produced a segment called We Produce Innovation, and we worked with the Emily Group on that, and that was referenced earlier. And as well, we just recently put another $50,000 into Ag in the Classroom to expand their programming, because our board's a big believer in that program. So with that, Jill, that's a roundup of some of the major highlights of things going on in the pulse and soybean industry in Manitoba.
Great. Thanks for the report, Daryl. We'll now go to Sam from Prairie Fruit Growers. She's still on the call.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here. I don't have near as long of a report for everybody. We had our AGM last weekend, which was really well attended, had some really good discussion on current trends. I noted that probably about half of the growers have started covering their berries, and a few are waiting until ideal temperatures set in. So we're just about ready for our nice long winter, hopefully a nice cold winter, none of this up and down crap like last year. That was not helpful. And yeah, we'll be back in spring.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Warren, do you have something or a report from Manitoba canola growers?
Yes, I do. Pleased to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah, the canola growers have been quite busy. Of course, the China file is front and center, but we'll step into that in a minute. We just got back from lobby days, which is it's a joint effort to meet with various MPs on all sides of the House, with the Canadian Canola Growers Association and the Canadian Canola Council. and of course with support of all the provincial directors, you know, in the Western Canada. We wanted to thank you very much for the Scope 4 report from our motion. The MCG is really pleased with this comprehensive report, and we want to thank Neil and his team for all of their efforts. While there's no particular action required at this point, we think it's a really good benchmark to set up future developments as they may or may not occur. As this report is outside of our purview, it's really shows the value of our partnership with KAP, and we truly value that partnership. Our promotion campaign, Hello Canola, is really doing quite well across Canada. And we just received 3 CAMA awards, 4 certificates of merit, and a silver leaf certificate. So Jen and her team have really outdone themselves with this particular promotion program, and we're really pleased with the results. Of course, as I mentioned, China is front and center, and with the anti-dumping investigation. We have 2 directors from our board who are registered as part of the inquiry, and it is proving to be a considerable amount of work. The inquiry or the process is really set up to be an obstacle, and so Chuck is going to talk to you a little bit about that, but that is the end of my report. But I'd like to shift that over to Chuck just to give us a bit more detail on China. Chuck?
Okay, Warren. As Jill mentioned, China, I guess, claim of Canada dumping canola at below cost of production has been a big issue. It's been a very busy month. Basically, once China made this claim that we were dumping canola, we had roughly a month for Canadian organizations to respond to the claim. So the deadline for completing and filling out the questionnaires that China wanted is today. So all the information has to be in Beijing, China, today, translated to Mandarin. There are roughly 29 respondents who are involved in this action. 7 producers, various grain exporters and grain buyers in Canada. The federal government is also involved, providing some information. And then there are even Chinese importers and crushers who are involved, because any tariff is going to increase their cost of production in China. So we are at the deadline. We're submitting the information. China can levy a provisional tariff starting November 20th. And then they have a year to complete their investigation of all the information supplied. At the end of the year, they can either remove the provisional tariff or impose a tariff for up to 5 more years. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen. This thing could be settled in a matter of a few months, or it could be dragged out for 5 to 6 years, maybe even longer if they wish to continue the tariff. So that is sort of like a real quick update. But like I say, we are trying to provide information to show that we are not dumping any canola into China and disrupting their own domestic market. So that's the end of that report, I think.
Thanks, Chuck and Warren. And we'll move on to, I guess, our last commodity group here today. Christy Lane, did you have an update from dairy farmers in Manitoba?
Yes, thanks, Jill. I'll just give a quick update. We're still continuing to work with the other Western provinces, which we are calling the Western Milk Pool. And actually today, as we speak, there is a meeting going on in Calgary where they're just sort of working on the governance structure and figuring out how staff from the different provinces are going to be handling their workload. And just following on that, we have a major construction project that is on the books here. It's called Dairy Innovation West, and it's basically a concentration plant that is going to be allowing milk to be transported more efficiently across the prairies, specifically into British Columbia, where the majority of the dairy processing plants are located. So currently the construction is almost complete. We're hoping for that to be done in December. And then they'll start doing some testing with water. And then towards the spring is when that plant is expected to be fully operational. When we're talking about supply management, I guess in general, another thing that's on our radar is the somewhat controversial Bill C-282, which is a commitment to keep supply management from being eroded in future trade deals. So that is still being talked about. And another issue we're watching closely is the new administration south of the border and how that impacts trade, and specifically with the CUSMA review, dairy is expected to be reviewed in 2025. So we are, closely watching that. We're cautiously optimistic with our domestic demand is going very well right now. So just wanting to see how we are impacted by things that are going on south of the border. Another update, we have recently unveiled a new exhibit at the Children's Museum. We had one there previously, and so we've done some updates to it. And so we just recently unveiled that. And then finally, our AGM is coming up December 4th to 6th. So that is a brief update of what we're up to.
Thanks, Christy-Lane. We will switch gears to districts. So District 1.
I guess it's Bill Campbell here. I can give a little bit of an update. Good crops. There was some variability, probably disappointing canola yields, and bean yields were better than expected. Good feed supplies. I've heard that KAP prices are even stronger, but there's been a little slow to come to market because of the open fall. Very good fall for nutrient management and fall applied herbicides. We've had good movement of crops, except for when the fear of strikes and rail lines are impeded, that there has been some delay, and farmers have been pretty active at moving the crops. I guess concerns moving forward is the Bill C-293, which has been referred to as the Vegan Act. It's in the Senate now, and it is quite alarming, the powers that particular bill has. And I guess the ongoing election tariffs. I see canola is down pretty near $17 this morning, and how that will affect the grain markets. And I guess everybody's playing a wait and see, but I'm not sure every farm can play wait and see as we look forward to next year and start to manage our farms for 2025. But all in all, I guess there were some bumps and hurdles and some problems, but it looks like it was a good crop in the end. Good wheat crop. It was good old wheat survived the best of all.
Thanks, Bill. Jake, did you have some more to add?
Yeah, just that we did have a district event in District 1 and District 7. So that was held in Brandon on the 30th of October. So we kind of brought out people from both areas just to get some engagement and do something a little different. So we held it at Section 6 Brewing, and the subject was landowner rights, rural crime. So we had a constable out from the Manitoba RCMP to talk about some of the trends they were seeing. And then we also had a law firm out of Brandon to talk about some of the interpretations of the law as a landowner and your rights. So we had a lot of attendance there. I know Jill attended too. probably something we'll look at doing again in the future. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming up to that.
Thanks, Jake. We'll move on to District 2. Is there someone from District 2? I don't see a hand. We'll move on to District 3. Colin?
Yeah, like other people have said, we've had a pretty phenomenal year here. We had early rain that drowned out a few spots, but overall the crops compensated, and it would be probably for most farms in District 3 would be one of the largest crops that they've had in a long time anyways. We've still got a little bit of fertilizer going down, and with the nutrient variance, I think it's been helpful for a couple of guys, but most things are wrapped up here.
Thanks, Colin. District 4. Don't see any hands up. Maybe Mark, did you have anything to add from District 4 at all? Things happening in your area?
No, I don't.
Okay.
There's been good publicity about our upcoming district annual meeting, so hopefully that's well attended.
Great.
Jill, I think Kevin Peters is there, but there might be a mic issue.
Oh, goodness. Kevin. You're muted still. Oh, there you go. Oh, no, we can't hear you. You maybe want to, if you want to type something in the chat, I can get Colin to read it out after I go through the rest. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Good. Thumbs up. District 5.
That's me.
There you go.
It was a good year. Very average crops. We had too much moisture, just like Bill and them had said before. It's been a nice open fall. We've gotten all the fertilizers down. Field work is done. Ruts are cleaned up. Seems to be very ample supply of feed and so forth. And so I think we're just looking forward to putting this year to bed, and let's start for next year.
Great. Thanks, Hubert. Hopefully we'll see everyone bright and early tomorrow morning in your district. We'll move on to District 6.
Yes. Excuse me. District 6, like everywhere else, harvest has been completed. Harvest of the cereals was really good, especially wheat and oats, extremely good yields. Canola, a lot of variability. I've heard of crops down in the teens and yields in the 60s. So a lot of variability. Probably one of the best soybean crops for most of the producers in the area. Yields in the 50s and 60s, I've been told. And like everybody else has said, fertilizer work is pretty much completed. Field work's all done. Everybody's just putting things away and getting ready for snow. One last comment is that the corn back in June, corn crops weren't looking that great, but they really recovered due to the good growing conditions in August and September. And farmers were harvesting their corn about mid-October, and the moisture levels were in the 17 to 20% range. And so that's one of the driest harvests I've ever heard of in the last 25 years. And very little drying had to occur. Yields were anywhere from 140 to 180 bushels in this area. So I think everybody's going to consider this a really good year for corn if the prices just improve a little bit.
Thanks, Chuck. Go to District 8. Might not have anybody from District 8. See any hands? District 9. And District 10, Shannon.
Good morning. Thank you. So harvest is complete here, as well as
There's a little bit of nutrient management continuing, but for the most part, both for livestock producers as well as for grain, our nutrient management is completed in the area. I would say that the crops were probably around average. Certainly soybeans did a little bit better than people expected, and some of the cereals a little less, with canola variable. And I think that we want to put 2024 to bed as well. As you know, we only got 50 to 60% in our district seeded this year, this spring. And so we're looking forward to 2025 as well.
Thanks, Shannon. And just the update from District 4, Kevin put in the chat. And basically, year was quite good, but also keep remembering acres that were not seeded in the spring. Fall was very good weather, gave us everyone a chance to get things ready for next spring, including manure applications, and looking forward to our district meeting. So thank you, Kevin and Marg, for District 4. And that kind of concludes all of the cross-province updates. We will move on into other business. I know there was one question came up in the mic as far as just a quick update on plan for recruitment for the general manager position. But was there, before I kind of just give a brief update on that, was there any other comments, concerns, anything else in other business before I just kind of briefly go over where we're at for recruitment? Colin.
Just quickly, Jill, I forgot to mention there was a provincial variance in effect for nutrient for the deadline for this year. So that it's been pushed to the 15th, so midnight on, or I guess 11:59 for Friday. I'm just going to put a link in the chat where you can follow along in the event that there are additional extensions given. I'll just put that in there right now for everyone to keep their eyes on.
Great, Colin, I was going to mention that. That's great work on that committee where there actually was 2 extensions given. So they are keeping in mind the weather conditions for that. So it's nice to see everyone having a chance to get prepared for next year. Before I go on, we do have one more hand in the David Rourke.
I guess we've all noticed that the AGM in February is just essentially a one-day event with the reception before. I always have some aversion to going downtown and parking, and I'd like the executive to consider using a rural hall like, say, Oak Bluff, where the cost is probably lower and still can be catered fairly simply, and parking's free, and there's no chance of somebody breaking in, or less chance of somebody breaking into your vehicle. And maybe just a comment on why the format has changed.
Great. I can add some additional comments, but Colin, did you want to maybe update on the process on how we've gotten to, I think, a spectacular one-day event, and including a reception the night before? But Colin, I'll let you start, and then I can maybe add some comments.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the question, David. I know we might have spoken about this briefly before, but so we did last year for the 40th, we did it a bit of a larger format just to celebrate the 40 years. But the feedback we've received over the past few years has been around a shorter meeting. So, and with policy discussion. So that's why this year we're implementing those policy roundtables. We'll be doing in the afternoon. Topics will be given in advance. But so that's just some of over the past couple of years, the development of the format, and your comment regarding the venue. I know that that's a concern that we've heard from lots of people and other individuals whose trucks may not even fit in the parkade. I think Jake might have been one of those, but definitely appreciate that feedback. And just I'm not sure in terms of agreements with the hotel and how those agreements work, but appreciate the feedback. Jill, I'll pass it back.
Yeah, thank you, Colin, for that. And the staff do a tremendous amount of work in feedback with members as well as other individuals that attend. And you know, shortening into the 1 day, you know, was something that has been consistently coming up in the comments, but certainly, you know, looking, you know, maybe to a rural event. What we'll do is we continue to keep up with the members that do attend, and we will bring it up at our district meetings again for discussion as to how people feel about it. But we've actually seen over the last 2 years with the subtle changes that we have been making, that our attendance is going up. Members and people that are attending are finding tremendous value from attending it. So we do keep in touch, but thank you for your comments, David. Are there any other comments? And then I will briefly touch on recruitment. Just looking to see if Janeth is still on the call. I can't see her. I would have passed it over. We do, the board did strike a recruitment committee immediately at our last board meeting, which was held the beginning of November. The posting is actually already active and receiving quite good response. As far as our anticipation for filling that position, we're hoping for and have been received good input back from our recruitment agency that we're working with, that we're aggressively seeking someone before our AGM, and we'll see where that goes. And as far as in the interim, I can comment on the management that we have. Management teams that we have at KAP right now are more than capable to carry on the gavel in the interim because of the short period, as well as the executive will also be stepping up to have more contact as well to ensure that we have a smooth transition. But Brenna did provide a very detailed transition process in the interim, and will be included in assisting up until the new general manager takes over. So looking for a smooth transition into that role. But thank you for the question, Pam. If you have any other comments, we could certainly take that offline. But business as usual, and we have a great team looking after it. So, and I think if I'm going to give every third call here for any other comments. And we're a little bit over time, but I certainly encourage and appreciate the additional dialogue and certainly the questions this morning. And I have David Rourke. I'll give you
one more. Sorry about that. But
one more quick question or comment.
Yeah, Mark Rempel had mentioned that they had fairly good advertising for their district AGM. And I guess I'd just like to remind who's ever in charge of our district that maybe we need to do a little bit more, whether it's printed or phone or social media or just an old-fashioned phone tree where certain members just phone other people and make sure that they come, because our attendance has been pretty low in the past.
Yeah. And certainly Shona and the team at the office can assist you with any information they have, David. So by all means, there is additional. I know we do day-to-day, people rely on emails, so it's to have the correct information at the office, because they are reaching out, and I know reaching out again right before the meeting. So there is additional help from the office. So certainly if you need some assistance to kind of leading that helm from your district, reach out to get some of that assistance. But thank you, David. And I guess on that note, I will ask for an adjournment from someone from the group. David, thank you. Seconder? Kevin Peters, District 4. Thank you very much. And by all, I'm hoping to get out to all the district meetings. I have it on my calendar, so hope to see you at your district meeting. And please register for AGM in February. Thanks for attending, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.